The Sony WH-CH700Ns have been a very popular pair of entry-level ANC headphones for a while now, cause they're decent and their minor shortcomings are easy enough to ignore. But more importantly, they're super popular because they routinely go on sale for ridiculous prices. But now we have their successors, the Sony WH-CH710Ns. Now, I want to stress that, yeah, these headphones are decent and they do have some very important upgrades over the 700Ns. But unfortunately, they aren't the slam dunk that I was hoping for, and in some ways, they actually fall short from their predecessors. I just really think that some questionable decisions were made here regarding this upgrade. Now, first off, there's price. The 710Ns have a retail price of $200, just like the 700Ns when they first came out. But just like the 700Ns, I do expect these headphones to routinely go on sale, especially on shopping holidays. So, if you want to pick these headphones up, they'll be linked down below. But I do want to stress that even though these headphones have a retail price of $200, unfortunately, they don't come included with a carrying case or even a carrying pouch. And I say that's unfortunate because there are plenty of $200 ANC headphones out there that come included with some kind of case. The ones that come to mind right now are the Sennheiser HD450BTs and their softshell case, and there's also the Skullcandy Venues, which come with a proper hardshell case. And plainly said, if you are planning on commuting a lot with the 710Ns, I highly advise that you invest in a hardshell case. But this now leads us to build quality, which was actually one of the 700N's biggest drawbacks, specifically because these headphones like to crack and squeak a lot whenever you handle them. But thankfully, that's no longer the case with the new 710Ns. These headphones stay relatively silent whenever you flex them. Add to the fact that these headphones have a new, smoother, slightly more low-profile design, and they're a little more lightweight, weighing in at 220 grams, which is 15 grams less than the 700Ns. You would think that I would say that these headphones have way better build quality than the 700Ns. But there's a new major problem here, and that's the leatherette on their earpads and headband. The leatherette on these headphones is so coarse, it literally left me dumbfounded the first time I felt it, because the leatherette on the 700Ns feels way better than that of the 710Ns, because it's much smoother, whereas the 710Ns feel like sandpaper by comparison. Now, this isn't just me nitpicking, because the quality of the leatherette on headphones plays a huge role when it comes to comfort. And unfortunately, due to the 710N's rough-feeling leatherette, they can get a little itchy, which is a problem that I never had with the 700N. Now, you can easily remove the earpads on the 710Ns and swap them out, but my main question is, why on earth did Sony use significantly worse feeling leatherette on their new 710Ns compared to the 700Ns, and even when compared to some of their cheaper headphones like the Sony WH-CH700s and the Sony WH-510s? Now, when it comes to the other aspects surrounding fit and comfort, the 710Ns are big head approved because they don't have an exaggerated amount of clamping force. They have a firm fit, so they stay in place very well, making them a decent pair of headphones for working out. But they aren't too firm, so you aren't going to feel like your head is getting squeezed if you're cranially gifted, like me. Now, just like before, the 710Ns have very wide ear cups, so they should be able to fit most ear types. But unfortunately, the ear cups on the 710Ns aren't as deep as the ear cups on the 700Ns. So if you have ears that stick out a lot, you might feel them still getting pressed down a little bit. Even though my ears don't stick out too much, I still feel my ears getting pressed down a little bit by the 710Ns. So sometimes when I take these headphones off, my cartilage might feel a little tender, which again is something that didn't happen with the 700Ns. So overall, fit and build quality on the 710Ns is a bit of a mixed bag when compared to their predecessors. I really appreciate that the 710Ns don't crack as much whenever you handle them, and I like their new, smoother, more low-profile design. But when it comes to fit, even though the 710Ns fit okay, they fit worse when compared to the 700Ns. Their coarse-feeling leatherettes can feel a little itchy at times, and their shallow ear cups might press some people's ears down. Which, keep in mind, these are two issues that aren't present with the 700Ns. Now, when it comes to tech specs, the WH-CH710Ns have been upgraded to Bluetooth 5.0. But ultimately, this doesn't really matter because these headphones still perform relatively the same to the 700Ns. These headphones can still only be connected to one device at a time, so you still can't easily hot swap from one device to another like you can with a lot of other headphones out there. And unfortunately, these headphones have actually lost aptX support. Now, if you're an iPhone user, this doesn't really matter because these headphones are going to be using AAC anyways. But if you're an Android user, you're also going to be using AAC because surprisingly, these headphones also don't have LDAC support. But more importantly, when it comes to watching movies or videos on your phone, the 710Ns have zero latency on both iPhone and Android devices if you're using apps like Netflix, Disney Plus, or HBO Now. But there is a bit of latency whenever you try to watch YouTube videos on either device. But that latency is a little bit more prominent whenever you try to watch YouTube videos on an iPhone. But if you're an Android user, you can always get rid of that latency by turning AAC off. Nonetheless, this could just be an app thing because a lot of other headphones out there have the same issue. But I do want to point out that the WH-700Ns actually have zero latency across the board, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. So hopefully there is a software fix coming soon, because the WH-700Ns used to have the same issue, but not anymore. But thankfully, you can always just use a wired connection with the 710Ns because these headphones still have an audio jack. Now, I know this might sound simple or obvious, but I do gotta point out that these headphones still have an audio jack because a lot of other headphones out there are getting rid of their audio jack. And personally, I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. Now, one major upgrade the 710Ns have over the 700Ns is that they now charge via a USB-C port, which is great especially if you're an Android user. Now, overall battery life on both of these headphones is identical because they both have an advertised battery life of 35 hours with ANC turned on, and they both have the same fast charging numbers, where if you plug them in for 10 minutes from a dead battery, they're going to get you 1 hour of playback time. Overall, battery life on the 710Ns is above average, and they should last you about 2 weeks in between charges. At least, that's the case with me. But I do want to quickly point out that unfortunately, the USB-C port on the 710Ns is strictly used for charging these headphones. You can't use the USB-C port on these headphones as a wired connection. But now let's talk about listening to music with these headphones, because again, there are some questionable decisions here. First off, I gotta point out that the 710Ns no longer connect to Sony's headphones app, so you can't customize their EQ like you can with the 700Ns. Now, I don't have the slightest idea as to why Sony didn't include app support for the 710Ns, because that has been rather a standout feature for Sony headphones in general. And quite frankly, I really think the 710Ns need an adjustable EQ, because I'm simply not a fan of the 710N's stock EQ. Simply put, the 710Ns sound like what Beats used to sound like back in 2015. The 710N's stock EQ make the mids and vocals sound a little shallow, and they put an emphasis on the bass. Now, if you're someone that likes a bass-heavy sound signature on their headphones, these headphones might be up your alley. But even though these headphones have a bass-heavy sound signature, they're rarely going to physically rattle your head all that much. The bass on these headphones is mostly on the audible side. Overall, if you want to hear the mids and lyrics on these headphones, you gotta crank the volume all the way up with these headphones because the bass can be a little overpowering. And again, I'm confused as to where Sony got this bass-heavy sound signature from, because the 700N's stock EQ is much more neutral. With the 700N's stock EQ, you can actually hear the mids and vocals, and the bass only comes in when it has to. My only critique about the 700N stock EQ is that the highs might get a little bright sometimes. But with the 700Ns, that's not a problem because if you want, you can just go in and lower their highs so that they aren't ear piercing anymore. But another reason why people love the WH-CH700N is because if you like a bass-heavy sound signature, you can go into their app and crank up their bass as well. And through the app, you can actually have more bass on the 700Ns than on the 710Ns. But more importantly, you can also make sure that you can still hear the mids. So overall, yeah, I do think the WH-700Ns sound way better than the 710Ns, and you're now stuck with the bass-heavy sound signature on the 710Ns that just sound a little too shallow for my taste. So I really think that it would behoove Sony to add app support to their 710Ns, because sound quality wise, these headphones are not going to please everyone like the 700Ns can for the most part, because with those you can at least make them sound however you want. And also, the 710N's bass-heavy sound signature doesn't make them the best for watching movies with, because I found that it's very hard to actually hear what people are actually saying, unless you've got the volume cranked all the way up. But one area where the 710Ns have really been upgraded over the 700Ns is their active noise cancellation. The 710Ns block out noticeably more noise than the 700Ns. But just to taper expectations here, even though the 710Ns block out a decent amount of noise for a pair of entry-level ANC headphones, they don't block out nearly as much noise as the Sony 1000XM3s or the Bose NC700s. So if you see somewhere that says, these headphones block out just as much noise as these premium ANC headphones for half the price, no, they don't. They just want you to click on their affiliate links. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to jump into an ANC test. So, like you may have just seen, the 710Ns block out noticeably more noise across the board than the 700Ns. But where the 710Ns really sees major improvements is when it comes to blocking out random higher frequency sounds like chatter, which is actually harder to block out than constant low frequency sounds like road noise. And the amount of chatter a pair of ANC headphones are able to block out is what separates good ANC headphones from great ANC headphones. So overall, the ANC on the WH-710N have been improved, and these block out an above average amount of noise for a pair of $200 entry-level ANC headphones. And the best part is, the ANC on these headphones still has little to no cabin pressure. And another major upgrade these headphones have over their predecessors is that they now have an ambient mode, which is super useful for when you're walking around the city, or for even when you're watching the final season of Clone Wars at home. You can still hear when someone calls your name. The only thing to keep in mind is that you can't adjust how much noise these headphones let in, like with Sony's more premium ANC headphones. But more importantly, the ambient mode on these headphones sounds very natural, and there's no hissing in the background. So overall, the ambient mode on these headphones is great. The only thing that I want to point out is that the ambient mode on these headphones isn't active like on the 1000XM3s. So these headphones let in everything. They won't actively turn off their ambient mode whenever there are sudden spikes in loud noises. And finally, here's the microphone test, and I feel that Sony is trying something new here. There's definitely a lot more amplification going on these headphones, but I still can't help but feel that these headphones sound a little shallow, and the microphone on these headphones does like to peak quite a bit. Whereas the microphone on the 700Ns doesn't have nearly as much amplification. So I kind of think that the 710Ns sound a little less worse. But something that I do want to point out is that you no longer hear any cracking with the 710Ns while you're talking, like you might sometimes will with the 700Ns. Because, like I mentioned earlier, the build quality on the 700Ns isn't spectacular. So, with all that being said, I think the Sony WH-710Ns are a decent pair of entry-level ANC headphones, but unfortunately, they aren't the slam dunk that I was expecting, and in some ways, they fall short from their predecessors. I really like that these headphones are no longer crack and squeak whenever you handle them. USB-C charging is greatly welcomed. Having a great performing ambient mode on these headphones is awesome. And you can't deny that there are some major ANC performance improvements on the 710Ns from the 700Ns. But to me, the 710Ns fall short when it comes to sound and comfort when directly compared to the 700Ns. And sound and comfort are the two most crucial things when it comes to headphones. Due to the 710N's rough-feeling leatherette, their earpads can feel itchy at times, and since their ear cups are more shallow than the 700N's, they might press down on some people's ears, which is an issue I didn't have with the 700N's, but I do now. And then there's sound. First off, you can't customize their sound to your liking, like how you can with the 700N. But also, I think the 710N stock bass heavy EQ makes these headphones sound a little shallow for some people. Ultimately, the Sony WH-CH710N are a decent pair of ANC headphones, but I wouldn't say that they're the obvious choice for entry-level ANC headphones, like how I usually say the Sony XP900N are the obvious choice if you're looking for a pair of mid-tier ANC headphones. Actually, I highly recommend that you invest the extra bit of cash and get yourself the Sony XP900N. Because just like the 700Ns, the XP900N routinely like to go on sale as well for ridiculous prices. Link for those will be linked down below. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.